Welcome everybody to the annual gathering of our Schubert faculty, child, and research associates. We're so excited to see you all tonight. As many of you know, this event is meant to be focused on the incredible work of our faculty associates, both as a celebration and an update on the latest projects that everybody is working on. We also have with us tonight members of the Freedheim family as we pay tribute to Donald Freedheim. In addition to Dr. Freedheim's distinguished career in psychology, in 1997 he became the founding director of the then Schubert Center for Child Development. He served in this role until 2001. Don retired before I joined the psychology faculty in 2005, but I had several interactions with Don in those early years, all of which were warm and friendly and very encouraging to a new young faculty member. Recently, as I became more involved with the center, I had the opportunity to speak with Don occasionally. He was always so supportive and thoughtful during these conversations, and I'm honored to have had the opportunity to know him.
I'm especially honored to help introduce a series of tributes to Don Freedheim, whose legacy you are carrying forward so brilliantly. We are fortunate indeed to be joined this evening by two of Don's daughters, Julie Newman and Sarah Bargeski. Julie Bargeski, Sarah Newman. Oh, I'm sorry. Sarah Newman and Julie Bargeski. And who's married to Mark? Me. Okay. and Julie's husband, Mark. We're very grateful for your presence. Please excuse the name mix-up. I first met Don when I was an undergraduate here at CWRU in the Department of Psychology. I had to go to his office for some reason. I don't remember if I was in trouble or if I just needed advice. But he was always welcoming and always full of great advice and encouragement. And I never dreamed that day that I would later join the faculty and become one of his colleagues. And he was a wonderful colleague. And in particular, because I do twin research, Don would always keep me fully informed about all things twins because, as many of you know, he was a twin. And I always enjoyed the stories that he shared with me. I was inspired by his passionate commitment to everything he did, his scholarship and research, his teaching, mentoring, university service, and clinical practice. For me and for so many others, he became a special kind of role model, was supportive, wise, approachable, and his memory is a blessing to us all. The Schubert Center deserves credit for facilitating many of these mentoring relationships. In all these ways, Don's spirit and purpose live on. Thank you for being part of this occasion. And I would like to introduce my colleague and friend, Dr. Sandra Russ, who is a distinguished university professor.
Don Freedheim was a warm and generous person who made major contributions to the field of clinical psychology. And that's what I want to focus on tonight, the impact that he had. Oh, those are such good pictures. The impact that he had on the field of clinical psychology. First of all, he founded a very important journal, Professional Psychology, which filled a gap in the field at that time. He was also editor of psychotherapy for many years. He edited parts of the History of Psychology series, also the Handbook of Clinical Psychology. He loved editing. He was an excellent editor, and he wrote an article about editing, actually. He also was one of the first psychologists to write about implementing clinical services in a pediatric setting. This was in 1967. He wrote this article with Leonard Rome, and Leonard Rome's daughter, I think, is presenting tonight. I don't know if she's here right now, but she will be. And in this article, he discussed the advantages of functioning as a clinical psychologist in a pediatric setting. I wish I had time to read some of the sections of that article, but I don't to you. He also had an impact on the American Psychological Association. He was very involved in the governance Of APA, he had a number of different roles. One of them was to be on the board of directors. And in that role, he worked to get funding for children's mental and physical health. He was also president of the Cleveland Psychological Association, of the Ohio Psychological Association, and many other groups. He was very effective, and people saw this and elected him to these positions. Finally, as a colleague and friend, Don was a wonderful colleague. He welcomed me to the psychology department in 1975. He invited me to co-author a chapter on child psychotherapy with him. He invited me into his private practice. He was showing me the ropes as this junior faculty member. I don't know if I was aware of that at the time, but that's what he was doing. And he was a wonderful friend to many people. If you went anywhere with Don, in Cleveland or at APA, everybody knew him and was happy to see him and to talk with him. He showed up in different ways at difficult times in your life and at happy times in your life. And he would call, and it wasn't just an email. He'd call and you'd hear his voice on the phone. He loved his family. He was so proud of Gerda and of his 3 daughters. He talked about them all the time. And that's wonderful. He leaves a full and rich, I miss him. He leaves a full and rich legacy in all areas of his life. Thank you.
That's a hard act to follow, and I was confident, Sandy, you were going to simply talk about his professional life so I could talk about everything else. So, Don was a very strategic person, and so when I was thinking about this talk, by the way, I'm Betsy Short from Psychological Sciences, just in case anybody doesn't know me. Anyway, and I was trying to be strategic like Don, and so I came up with a little strategy for how to tell you about what I think about him, except I kept thinking it was called an acronym, and I knew it wasn't. Anybody know what an acrostic is? Any people in English here? When you take the letters of a word and then you come up with something that describes them. So I'm going to take Don Freedheim, and I'm going to do that. Don Freedheim, he was determined and dedicated. He wanted our department to be the best, and he tried desperately to bring out the best in every single one of us. And I feel very fortunate to have been there. Oh, he was optimistic. Boy, never did I hear him complain about anything. He was always looking on the bright side. He was no doubt inspirational. My next one was a little bit tricky. N. Anybody want to guess? He was naughty. He was definitely naughty. He was just mischievous. He was so much fun. I mean, I had so much fun with him, I can't tell you. And I came here at a very young age of 28 on faculty, and so it was really, he took me under my wing. It was unbelievable. F, he was friendly and fatherly. If you said that today, people might take offense with it, but I'm going to tell you something. As a young, single person coming to Cleveland by myself, not knowing anybody, I needed somebody to take me under my wing, professionally and fatherly, right? My father had just passed away, and Don was really very, very helpful to me. R, rambunctious. He was that too. You could go into a meeting with him, everybody in the whole room would see him, he would be making noise. That was Don. He really was a force to be reckoned with. E for easy to be with, and there's no one in the department who's ever been as easy as Don was to be with. No matter where you were or what you were doing, he was easy to be with. You just felt, relaxed. Another E, right? Eager to help others. Boy, he really helped me in my career. There's no doubt about it. There are 2 pictures up there, Jane Kessler and Don Freedheim, and I think I owe my entire career to both of them. There were other instrumental people, but those 2 people played a huge role, and I'm going to tell you just a couple quick stories in a moment. D, for daring to push the limits, and there's no doubt about that. Sometimes you all think it means in my department that I push limits. Don Freedheim makes me look like I was a saint, right? He really knew how to push all the limits. He had a high moral compass. He's enlightened. Boy, he was way ahead of his times in lots of ways, in my opinion. He had interesting extracurricular activities, AKA the picture on the camels, and he loved to share all of this exciting story with us. And M for matchless. This is a man who could not be matched. He was really a force to be reckoned with. Lee talked about her first experience with him. My first experience was walking in July 1st to Case Western Reserve University when nobody's ever there in the summer anyway, a new assistant professor. And I walked in, and he was the only person I saw. And I said, "Hi, how are you?" And he said, "I'm great. Are you a new student?" And while right now I would be flattered to death by that, at that time I wasn't. And he saw the look on my face, and guess what he did? He took me out for ice cream. And we were fast friends ever since. Okay, I had more stories, but I've already gotten the heads up, so I adhere to the rules here. Don was really somebody who inspired me to help and be dedicated to service to children and families, kids with disabilities. He taught me so much, and boy, I've got some twinship going on in my house too, so we're fast friends about that as well. My husband's a twin, I have twins. But I also have 3 daughters, and much like his belief about his own 3 daughters, he inspired me to see the best in my children as well. So I owe him a lot, and I do miss him. Bye.
Good evening. I'm Cleve Gilmore, colleague of Don since 1975 in the Department of Psychology, now Psychological Sciences. Don was a good friend. He was a colleague. I was very fortunate that our offices were next door to each other for many, many years. And so we had a lot of time just to chat with one another. First time I met him was when he returned, probably from an earlier trip to Israel. He'd taken a sabbatical in Israel with his family for a year. And I thought, now, I'm a brand new assistant professor, and I think, wow, that's what sabbaticals are about. That's a great model. And then I would hear about all the other trips that he and Gerda and the kids were taking everywhere. And what I took from that is that, well, even though we're supposed to work hard and publish and teach, you're also supposed to have fun with your family. And that was a lesson that I took from Don, and he reinforced. He was the person I would go to in the department for advice about personal family issues. He gave me advice one time with a niece. A niece was acting out. Yeah, she's 15 years old, and I went to him. I knew, here is a person rated as one of the top child psychologists in Cleveland. I described the situation, asked him for advice, and he said, "Yeah, it's really a tough time, Cleve. It's just, my advice is that you pray that she makes it to 16. What? Well, I've spoken to other people and said, yeah, that was really good advice. She made it, by the way. She did fine. After we had our second child, apparently I appeared a little worn out. He said, "Cleve, you look a little bit tired." I said, "Well, the kids were close in age." He said, the baby Heather is waking up during the night. Adam still wakes up during the night, and so, getting disturbed sleep. I'm not sleeping very much at night. And he says, "Oh, don't worry, that will pass in about 10 years. Which he was right. He was right. Don, you've heard lots of things about Don, including from Sandy, his great contributions. He was very modest, though. I served a stint as chair of the psychology department, and in that role, you evaluate faculty member annually. I said to him one year, I said, "Don, why haven't you gone up for promotion to professor?" He goes, "Oh, I don't know. I don't get NIH grants." I said, "Look at all that you've done and you are doing." He goes, "Really?" Of course, he went up. He made full rank. That was wonderful to see. A very, very modest man, but a man who touched our lives in very deep ways, in meaningful ways. A man who I will always feel in my heart. Thank you.
I did not have the honor of meeting Dr. Freedheim, but it's clear that he was a giant in the profession and in life.
We're looking forward to welcoming Dr. Lawrence Steinberg as this year's Kessler Freedheim Lecturer on October 21st, 2024. never too soon to hold the date on your calendar. He'll present.
March.
Oh, March. What did I say?
October.
Oh, excuse me. March. He will present on the topic of how teen brain research shapes and continues to impact juvenile justice.
Hi, I'm Ellen Rome, head of adolescent medicine at Cleveland Clinic Children's. And first, so grateful that Amy and Sarah and families are here to celebrate my second dad. And they had the benefit of my dad, pediatrician, and first clinical faculty at Case Lenny Rome. And Don would be so proud, not just of what his family has accomplished, but what this extended family has accomplished. You all do him very proud. I remember when he was excited in telling us about what this was going to be. It's beyond his wildest dreams of hearing of what everybody's doing. So kudos and keep it coming.